Boker Tov, today's daf is daf mem aleph in Nidrim, as we learn for 4 shleimim for Yom Tov with Ben or Pegachayim. Yesterday we got down about 18 lines down on the page. Kihavi, about before the lines get wide, about 4 or 5 lines above that. Kihavi Gomer Rebbe Tlas Esrei Api Hilchosov. When Rebbe had studied 13 different ways, 13 different interpretations of halachas. We're talking about here again. Remember, the topic is people who are sick or forgot their learning. And we said that people get sick, they can forget their learning unless it's brought back to them, right? You could teach it to them again, but it's somewhere in their head. So Rebbe had learned 13 different interpretations of the halachas. Agron Rav Chia, he taught it to Rav Chia, his student. Rav Chia was a student of Rebbe, and he taught it to him. Shiva minham, but who did he taught him only 7 of the 13. The other 6 he did not teach him. The Sof Chosh Rebbe, then Rebbe got sick. At the end, he turned sick. He called some sort of dementia, and he forgot all 13. So Rav Chia, who had learned 7 out of the 13 different interpretations from Rebbe, so Rav Chia reminded Rebbe, taught him back what Rebbe had taught him, and those were replenished, and Rebbe learned those. Shisa Azdu, but 6 of them, the 6 that he had not taught Rav Chia, were lost. So there was a fuller, a man, a cleaning man, a dry cleaner, let's call him. He wasn't a student, he wasn't a Talmud of his, but he had overheard Rebbe. When Rebbe learned, apparently he sang it out loud, with a little shakel v'tayr and a little sing-song. He heard Rebbe learning, and Rebbe learned it out loud, and this dry cleaner had heard him and overheard him, and he absorbed the learning. So Azal Rav Chia v'Gomer Yason Kamikis. So Rav Chia then learned these other 6 that Rebbe had not taught him. He learned them from the dry cleaner. V'Azda Ahadar Yasun Kame Rebbe. And then Rav Chia in turn taught them back to Rebbe. Karavi Chazi le Rebbe Lahukas. When Rebbe met that dry cleaner, Amalei Rebbe, Rebbe told him, Atah Sisa Osives Chia, you made me and Chia. In other words, you revived me and Chia by teaching me those. The 7 that Chia had taught, that I had taught Chia, he reminded me of. The 6 that I had not taught anybody, you had learned them from overhearing me, and you have revived, so to speak, you revived Chia and me. Some say, Atah Sisa es Chia, you revived Chia, you made Chia, you revived him. Chia also and Chia made me. Either way, the idea is that the dry cleaner overhearing the learning, sometimes, like somebody in the house can hear you learning. It's like the bar mitzvah boy, his sisters usually know the laning as good as he does. Those things. So that's what happened here too. The dry cleaner had heard Rebbe, and then he taught Rav Chia the 6 that he had learned, and maybe he had all 13 of them, but at least those 6 he taught him. He taught Rebbe. Amar of Alexander Rav Chia Barabba. The miracle that revives the sick person, greater than the miracle that was done to Chanayim Shel Zariah, who went through the fire. Chanayim Shel Zariah, it was simply a fire made by commoners, by man. Anybody can extinguish it. But the sickness that comes from heaven, that a person gets sick, that's from heaven. Nobody made him sick per se. God decreed that he should get sick. So Shamayim, it's from heaven. So if that can be, who can extinguish that? So if you can be revived from being sick in a sickness which is normal, not a sickness which is man-made, so to speak. I mean, today you could argue certain things are man-made, right? After the pandemic, but we don't really know. Fact is, who gets sick, who doesn't get sick, that's all decreed from heaven. So if Chanayim Mishav Zariah, they survive a human fire, which anybody could extinguish, but who can extinguish a fire from God? So it's a greater miracle to be revived from a sickness than to go through the furnace like Chanayim Mishav Zariah. When the end has come for a man, when his time has come, everybody can rule over him. In other words, if he's doomed to die, then any person, any animal, God can send anybody to take him. That's what kindness said. Whoever finds me will kill me. In other words, I'm not only going to be taken care of, killed by, the court or the hangman or whatever. Anybody will be able to kill me because I'll be lost when my time will come. Rav Amr min Adain from this pasuk, Mishpatecha Amdu Hayom, well, everybody will stand up today to your judgment. When it's time to stand to your judgment, meaning for God to call it quits on the guy, is God's servant. Anybody, God can send anybody to take care of him. Tells him more. Rav Shapiro Amrulay, the story is told. Rav Shapiro was told. Amrulay told him that a tall man has died. What was the story? He was riding a small mule. Matatisuri came to a bridge. Istavit, and it's just like the Lashon says of Shiur. The animal went crazy. He had a nightmare, went crazy. Shadya, and he threw this little mule threw the tall man. In other words, you think of on a horse, so he was thrown by the horse, thrown off. So the mule threw the guy off on this bridge because Shachav, and he died. He fell into the river below and he died. Kariel Nafshe, when Rav Shapiro heard this story, he quoted the same pasuk we just mentioned. Your judgments, they stood today for your judgments, because in this case, who was the servant that was, so to speak, the agent of the Malach HaMavos was the mule. In other words, when a person's time has come, any animal, any person, any circumstance can cause him to die. Shmuel saw a story. Now saw a case, and he actually saw this happen. Maybe this is like the parable goes along with it. What did he see? He saw Karkusadak Akrava Yasiva al he saw Akrava Yosef al Karsa. He saw a scorpion sitting on the back of a frog. And the frog enabled him. What does this remind you of, right? The frog enabled him to cross the river, right? The scorpion couldn't get across the river. Tarka Gabre, and when he reached the other side, he bit the scorpion, killed a man, bit a man, and he died. So what happened? The scorpion couldn't get to the man, couldn't cross the river on his own, but God made a frog go there, and the scorpion rode on the back of the frog, and he got across the river, and he was able to kill the guy. Because again, he wrote this pasuk, he quoted this pasuk about him. Again, when they stand for your judgment, everybody is your servant, God. In this case, even the scorpion. Certainly, a person's bitten. Even what does the Gemara say that even if you stub your finger, that's also min hashamayim. It didn't just happen. Everything has a cause from heaven. We don't always know what the reason is, but it's important to think about it. Right? Amar Shmuel, right? That you shouldn't visit a sick person. You go to Mimbar Kachola. We learned yesterday the importance of Mimbar Kachola, that if you go there, you're Machayim Mason, and if you don't go there, it's almost like you're killing him. But who do you visit? You visit somebody who the heat has wrapped up. Chaltas is like the Ran says, it's like a fighter, a soldier who is full of armor. He's wrapped up in his armor, like a full-fledged soldier. Right? Only somebody's wrapped up in his heat, meaning guy's got fever. So what do you mean? Only guy's got fever? And if he doesn't have fever, you don't sick him, you don't visit him. What does it come to? Rabbi Yossi ben Parta Omer Mishim Rabbi Lezer. You don't visit certain kinds of people. What does it mean? A person who has abdominal disease, meaning he's got a bad stomach. We'll see why in a second. You don't visit him. Not a person who has sickness of the eye, has an eye disease, an eye infection. Not a person who's got a very bad headache. Why don't you visit these people? So Gemara says, I understand if a person who has stomach sickness, stomach virus, or as we'll see, dysentery, something like that, it's embarrassing. He's constantly running to the bathroom. He's passing gas. It's embarrassing. Don't bother him. What's the reason why you shouldn't visit people who have an eye infection or people who have a headache? My time. Because of Rav Yudah's reason. Talking is bad. Talking is bad for. Remember, it's bad for wine. We talked about that. Remember that in the wine process, talking is bad. Well, it's also bad for the eye. For some reason, the waves of the talking, whatever, bad for the eye, right? Ulish, the Ger says it's the talking is bad. Ulish, and it's bad for fever also. So bad for fever, meaning in this case he has a feverish head, he has a headache. So these things are bad. So because he said before that he should visit, right? He said if he's very in terrible, he has a very bad high fever, you could visit him. But apparently, if it's so bad that he has a headache, then you shouldn't, because talking to him will only make it worse. Another girsa you see is this is the girsa of the Grub. The girsa, the way we have it in the Gemara, is kashal eitsha umali lishta. So maybe it's good for fever. So if a person has fever, him you could visit. If a person has a headache or an eye infection, that's not good. Amarava, eye ishta, fever. Ilav the parvanka, the malacha the mosa. If it wouldn't be that it's a messenger of the malacha mavas, meaning it's a forerunner. If a person has fever, sometimes it's a sign that he's going to die. If it wouldn't be that sometimes it is such a sign, Mali, it's actually good for the person, like thorns, which protect the tree from animals, etc., that fight it, right? Like thorns that protect the tree. Once in 30 days. In other words, it's not a bad idea. If it wouldn't be that fever could be a forerunner of Malchum Avos. Fever sometimes it's good. It's like a good cleansing mechanism. It could be as good for the person as thorns are for a tree.
Fever
but
fights disease.
Huh?
Fever fights
the disease, right, fights up disease, right. It's right. Right. It's fighting it off. It's a sign of the what it was called, the antibodies that the what do they call it? The whole system, the
white blood cells.
Yeah. So it's
Great motion on the media.
Well, yeah. So so it would be good. In other words, sometimes fever is good, but sometimes it's also a bad sign. So it depends on the situation. It's also like an antidote. It's like an antidote for poison for the body. And I'd like to see, it fights it off, and that's that's what it does, right? It fights off the disease. If it wouldn't be that sometimes it goes too far, I would say that it is a good thing. But Nachman Yitzchak Lo, he says, Lo hivelo turak. I'll tell you what, I'd rather not have the fever and not have the healing elements of it. It's an antidote. You know what? Don't give me either one. Sometimes it could be an antidote. It's maybe a milder case. If it's a severe case, it could be, yes, I don't want to be tested. Arson yafalacholo. So arson, we don't know what that is right now, but he says it's good for a sick person, so it's a good remedy. All right, it's a good remedy. So when I couldn't think of the word for it, the fever strengthens the immune system, right? That's what it gives him immunity to the disease. So it pushes, it fights off the disease, and it gives immunity to the body. We're going to say next tomorrow. My arson. That's the next line. Next word. Not even the next line. The same line. Arson yafalachol. It's good for. It's a good remedy. My arson. What is that? Chushla desari. It's peeled barley. I ticked up old barley, which is peeled. Duration alpha, which is very fat, so that it sticks to the sifter. Right. The nafi is like the sifter or the sieve. It sticks to that because it's when you sift it. It's so fat that it sticks to the top of the sifter. So that's what we mean. It's a kind of barley. It's peeled old barley. Amrabai Bain Bishula came this through the Torah, but you got to cook it real well, like cow meat, like ox meat. It's got to be cooked very well, and that's a good remedy. It's the fine barley. It's not the peeled barley, but it's barley which is very fine. Again, old barley which is very fine, that sticks, that's very fat and sticks to the top of the sip. Amar Bai again, the Bai said on that Boim Bishula Kibisra Torah, but still has to be cooked very well, like the like ox meat. That's what he says. So either way, whether you learn like Rabbi Yonasan that it's the peeled old barley, or whether it's the fine barley, the way Rabbi Yosef learned it. Either way, Abaye commented on that it's got to be cooked very well. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, boredom. It's not boredom. Boredom ain't mavakin. A person has boredom. What is boredom? So we'll see. It's really like dysentery, meaning boredom. It's like a gushing well of blood, that's coming out of his rectum. It's probably like dysentery. Ain't mavakin. You don't visit him. You don't visit him because it's embarrassing. You don't even mention the name boredom. So the boredom sounds bad. It's like we call it dysentery. So you know what that is, right? But it says blood's gushing out of him. You don't even want to say the words.
Bleeding internally.
Yeah. My time on blessed. It's called boredom because it's like a gushing well. It's like a well, a mine, which is that's why it's called boredom, because it's like this gushing well. The Ran says of Aleph, Tevach, it's one word, it's boredom. It's the dam that blood is gathering at the bottom. So the Mishnah said that, again, going back to a case where Reuven is forsworn from having honor to Shimon. Either Shimon says you can't have enough for me, or Reuven said I'm not going to have enough for you. Either way, Shimon can't give enough to Reuven. So then the Mishnah said that what can he do? But he can give him what's called refuas nefesh, avalo refuas mamon. Refuas nefesh. We normally translate refuas nefesh as psychological help, right? Refuas nefesh, like the person needs, psychology. Avalo refuas aguf. But he uses refuas nefesh, avalo refuas mamon. What do we mean by that? Hechitan. What do we mean by that? You can Shimon, even though he cannot give not to Reuben, he can give him refuas nefesh, but he can't give Hechitan ilem refuas nefesh bechinam refuas mamon b'schar. If that's what he meant to say, he can give it to him for free, but he can't give him for money, because if he's giving him something that people get money for and he doesn't take money for it, so he's giving him something. Or it doesn't necessarily mean b'schar. Some say that if Reuven can't have from Shimon, but Reuven pays Shimon for that service, then he's not really getting anything from Shimon because he's paying in turn for it. Could very well be that refuas nefesh mamon he's saying is that something that you normally get paid for, and if you don't take money, it's like you're giving him money. So if that's what it means, but why say refuas nefesh? Why do you say refuas marpei refuas nefesh of refuas aguf? So listen, Achi, marpei bechinam of lo b'schar. He can give him refuah for something which is not you don't get money for. So now that's just something he wants to do. Brought some liba below b'schar, right? And we took asur ala rofe. So here in this case, you could say that the way the Ran learns is that speaking where Reuven can't give an out to Shimon, and can't give a Shimon, and Reuven is helping him. So therefore, okay, so if he gives him something for free, that he can do, but he can't get money from Reuven. That's one way to learn, like the way Ran learns. Or you could say he just didn't take money. If Shimon can't give an out to Reuven, and Reuven gives him a refuah that you should get paid for, and he doesn't get paid, so then he's giving something to Reuven. Or you can learn the other way, that Reuven can't give an out to Shimon. So if Shimon, the Dr. Shimon, gives him a refuah and gets money for it, so he's getting something from Reuven. But either way, if you're talking about money versus free, so just say, why talk about refuas nefesh and not refuas mamon? Say marpei bechinam lo b'schar. He can do it for free, but he can't get money for it because he can't get enough from moving. The way the Rambam's Ella doesn't mean it's not talking about money or free. Ella refuas nefesh gufo refuas mamon hemto. This actually means if you're just healing. If Shimon can't give it out to Reuven, but he's allowed to heal him. He's a doctor. He can heal him. He can heal him. Refuas nefesh gufo refuas mamon behemto. If Reuven is an animal that needs a refuah, but I guess the doctors in those days also were vets, veterinarians, right? Says he can't heal his animal. You're giving him something. You're helping his animal. You're helping him get worth more money. But refuas nefesh is a mitzvah. He has to do it. That he could do. We'll talk about. We'll see the Ran in a second to more details about this. Amar Sutra, Bartugi Amar Avalomelo. He could tell him Samploni Yafala, Samploni Rala. He could say this. You can't heal his animal, right? Physically, you can't heal the animal, give him medicine, operate on him, do anything like that. But he could tell him this is good for your animal, that's bad for your animal. Just giving him advice like that, that's not giving him directly hanom. Says the Ran on the right side of the page, 3 lines from the top of the page. Like we said, where Ruvain, Dr. Shimon rather cannot give an out to Ruvain. Dr. Shimon can't give an out to Ruvain. He shouldn't heal his animal. Now, when we say that he could heal himself, in other words, Dr. Shimon could heal Ruvain, even though Dr. Shimon's not supposed to give any pleasure to Ruvain, but he could give him healing. And we're talking about even when there's another doctor there too. Even when there's another, I said, another doctor, he shouldn't get involved. No. If not, he can certainly heal him. You have to return your lost item. If Shimon can't give it out to Reuben, but Reuben lost an item, you can return him. If I can return your wallet or your car or your lost jacket, certainly I can heal your body, right? So we're talking about even when there is another doctor there. If there's nobody else, of course he comes in. He's the only one who could do it. Right? This goes to the Shiloh also, but you lost time if somebody else could do it. Except if somebody else could do it, let somebody else do it. But if there's nobody else to do it, he can even return on. Still he could heal him, even there's no doctor. You're not always zocha to get a refuah from a certain doctor. Like people say, go for another opinion, or this didn't work. You don't say, oh, this doctor is the best. You don't bother with anybody else. No, necessarily. You need a special, you're not always zocha to get the refuah from this particular doctor. You might be zocha from another one. It's an important concept. It's an important line there to underline, right? That you can't always get a refuah, not necessarily from the best doctor, right? And I'm going to call zocha. I always repeat the story, but I've had 4 hernias in my life, and every time it went nice and simple. There's another fellow in the neighborhood we all remember. I don't want to mention his name; he's no longer alive. And he once had a hernia, and his brother-in-law knew the chief surgeon at Shaarei Tzedek, the chief surgeon, the chief surgeon. I went to a regular guy at the medical center. He does these all the time. He had no end of problems. He was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and I was like an outpatient, and he had constantly infections. Why? Because that guy, the top thing, he's used to opening heads and opening up hearts. When was the last time that he did a hernia? In medical school, So you don't necessarily need the best doctor. You need the right doctor. So you never know, right? You never know. Okay. Aval Omerlo, I'm going on in the Ran. Aval Omerlo, I'm continuing in the Ran. Aval Omerlo, Samplon, Yavla, Samplon, right? You could tell him, even though you can't heal his animal, but you could tell him this medicine's good for him. The even the Iula, Yavla, Usam, Alesha, he didn't, Dr. Shimon, who's now functioning as a vet, did not actually heal the animal directly. He didn't give him the right medicine. He's just giving him advice, and it comes from a male. He's not giving him directly. And we know the that means that you can give advice for the animal, but for the person himself, you could actually heal him. Umiu, says the Ran, you have to heal him with his own medicine. Shimon, first, this is what I'm saying at the beginning. When Shimon is allowed to heal Reuven, even though Shimon can't give it out, Dr. Shimon is not supposed to give it out to Reuven, but he can heal him. He should use Reuven's medicine, not Shimon's medicine. He's not giving it. Gives it. If Shimon is not allowed to give Reuven, he said, "I'm not going to give you enough." Lo dafilu heicha the aimo lemura mimashi yisrape. Even that dafilu heicha the aimo lemura mimashi yisrape. The mitzvah covet. He's doing a mitzvah. What do you mean? A mitzvah of healing the guy. I'm returning his lost item, his lost health. Afilu achi. Even the Yovle mi delay mi ad liad officer. This is what he's telling you. Even though Shimon's allowed to heal him, but he shouldn't give it from Shimon's medicine. He should, have Reuven pick up the prescription at the kupah, and then he will heal him. Right? The boy can't have enough for him, so he needs to give him something or put it on the stone. Let somebody else take it. You shouldn't give it. Listen, he says. Heicha, listen to the interesting thing. We said before that all these cases are speaking about where Shimon can't give a nut to Reuben. How does that work? Either Reuben said, everything of yours is also to me like a carbon, I'm not going to have enough from you. Or Shimon can say, to Reuben, you can't have enough for me. Either way, Shimon can't have enough. So the Raj just described when Shimon cannot give enough to Reuben, he can heal him, give him refuah, give him medicine, but he shouldn't give him his own medicine, go out and pay for it, his own medicine, he concoct it and give it to him, because he's giving directly. He shouldn't do that, right? He should give him, let Reuben buy the medicine and give it. But he says, let's say Reuben said, I don't want to have enough from you. I don't want to have any of your assets. Then he could take some. Why? Like we said before. He said, I don't want to have any enough from your assets. I don't want to use your car. I don't want to use your house. I don't want to eat your food. But if it involved Reuben's life, something of his life that he didn't want to include in the net, like we said before, he didn't want to include that. So in that, if Shimon said, I'm not giving you Hana, you can't have it from me, then Shimon can't give, he can heal him, but Reuben better buy his own medicine. But if Reuben said, I forbid all your assets on me, he didn't mean to include life-saving elements life-saving things that Shimon may have, and therefore it could be mutter in that case. That's an interesting. Ron goes through those details. Says the Mishnah, in the Mishnah, even though Shimon cannot give it out to Reuben, not talking about a doctor now, just in general, he can't give it out to Reuben. He can take a bath in a large bath, like they go to the bathhouse, they sit in a big bathtub. He can give it out because he's not going to, not in the small one. Why? Because in a small one, if we're sitting together, Shimon, by splashing the water, might give Reuben some hana, or displacing the water, maybe he gets in there, the water will rise up and go all the way to the head of Reuben, whatever will help him. Definitely, he can sleep with them in the same bed, because that's not giving him an arm. Yudin says no. Only in the summer months when sleeping two people in a bed is not as comfortable. Two people sleeping together, each one exudes warmth on the other one, so he might give him pleasure. Shimon is giving him pleasure. But he can sit on the bed with him. He just can't sleep on the bed. They eat at the same table. Each one brings his own lunch. That's not a problem. They can't eat from the same plate. Many times they would give one big plate for everybody, and if they eat from the same plate, it could be that Shimon takes a smaller portion, we're going to get a bigger portion, so effectively he's giving him something. But let's say it's a big plate that goes back to the Balabais. The Balabais says, everybody, come, we're having a kiddush over here, and he puts out a big plate. If there's so much on the plate that they can't all finish it anyway, and it'll go back to the kitchen, then he could eat with him, because whatever he eats, he's not giving him more. There's plenty more anyway. He's not giving him out directly. Tanya. The Rice explains a little bit more. He shouldn't sleep with. He shouldn't bathe with him in the same bath, and he shouldn't sleep in the same bed. Rav Meir says it doesn't make any difference the size of the bed. In our mission, we just said that he shouldn't sleep with him. We said he could sleep with. He could sleep with him in the bed. Rav Yehuda said it depends on the summer or the winter. But the Tanakh, presumably Meir, just said, and he can sleep with him in the bed. Or Meir says he shouldn't sleep in the bed. So the Tanakh Mishnah apparently is not Rav Meir, because Meir says he shouldn't sleep with him in a bed, whether a big one or a small one. Rav Meir, in the summer months he could sleep. In the winter months he could sleep with him in a big bed where there's plenty of room and one's not giving pleasure to the other. And in the summer months, mutter. So Rav Yehuda says, Rav Yehuda in the Mishnah, who said it depends on the summer or the winter, when he said you're allowed to sleep with him in the summer months. So in the summer months, even in a small bed, they're allowed to, right? A small bed, right? Because what does Rav say? The Mishnah is Rav Yehuda Omer, Gedola b'masek shamim is mutter. V'ktani masachama mutter is mutter. So again, Rav Yehuda said masachama b'masek shamim in the Mishnah. He was talking about a small one, right? A small one, because in the small one is mutter in the summer months, but not in the winter. But a big one is mutter even in the winter months. That's what Rav Yehuda expands on that he didn't say in the Mishnah. But apparently there's three opinions, right? Because Rav Meir in the Brisa says that he shouldn't sleep with him on any bed at all. And the Tanakh Mishnah says you could sleep with him. So Rav Meir and the Tanakh Mishnah, Rav Meir and the Brisa and Tanakh Mishnah are minakatsa lakatsa. They're the two extreme opinions. Either you could sleep with him in a bed or you can't sleep with him in any bed. Rav Yehuda takes a middle road. Again, he could sleep with him. He could bathe with him in a large bath where he's not giving enough. In a small one, he could just he could sit in a schwitz, I guess, like in a sauna in a small one, because there again, he's not giving me directly. I have a mason one, but he could sit on the bed with him, that we saw in the Mishnah, not sleep, about the shulchan, he can again eat on the same table, not from one dish, because if you're eating from one dish, if Shimon takes a smaller portion, he's giving a bigger portion effectively to Reuben, giving him enough. But he could eat from a dish that goes back to the kitchen because there's so much, then he's not giving him enough. What does it mean a choser? So he explains, it goes back to the balabais, meaning it goes back to the kitchen because there's so much food. That's what he means by a tam choser. Otherwise, you don't really know what the word choser means. Says the Mishnah, lo yocheli mo mena evos. So if Neapolim, many times workers, they break for lunch and they're working hard in the field, so they don't just get a dish, they get a trough, puts out a lot of food. They need a lot of food, they need energy to work. So you shouldn't eat with them again in the same trough, because if he eats less, the other guy's getting more. And also you shouldn't work with him on the same furrow or the same row in the field. Why? Because if Shimon and Reuben are both working on the same one, Shimon might soften up the ground to make it easier for Reuben, right? If he puts his spade in there first, he's making it, so he shouldn't work for his Divrei Rav Meir. He could work in the same row as long as they're far away from one another. Far away from one another, and then what this guy's doing is not going to help the other guy. Says Gemara's Bakarov lo pligidas. Everybody agrees that you're right next to him in the same row, that one is helping him because Shimon's softening up the land for him. They don't suffer because the other guy doesn't have to dig as strong if they're right next to each other. Keep pligi. What's the gersa? Bakarov lo pligi the usher. The Gemara he's softening up land for it. Keep pligi. Where's machlokas barachok when they're far away? Or Meir Shabbat guess we're in rachok mishum karav. If he's far away, he's not really helping him. But if we don't even want him to work on the same row or the same furrow, even if they're far away, because you're afraid if you allow them when they're far away, you allow them when he's nearby to one another. The kamarapide when he's softening for the kamei. Or Rabban Savila goes, or Rabban say no. If they're right next to each other, giving each other, then he's going to give manah. If they're far away from one another, then there's no chance of giving a nah, and we don't make such a gzeira. All right, we'll pick up here tomorrow, Mr. Shem, from the Mishnah, from the top of Mem Beis. Have a good day, everybody.
Usually the Gemara asks